Let's update you on what is happening in Cuba. There have been some rare protests that have broken out there. In the capital, Havana, the island is grappling at the moment with its worst power blackouts in decades. It's been triggered by a US blockade. We saw hundreds of angry Cubans pouring onto the streets in several neighbourhoods late on Wednesday. You can see them here. They're so angry about these fuel shortages. They've blocked roads. They burnt rubbish on the streets. As you can see, this marks the biggest single night of demonstrations in Havana since the energy crisis took hold in January. Well, earlier, Cuba's Energy Minister said the island had completely run out of fuel, oil and diesel, leaving the power grid in a critical state as this blockade from the US is really squeezing the country's supply. Our Global Affairs reporter Mimi Swaby is with me, who's been looking into this and covering it for weeks. It was moving to this point, wasn't it, Mimi? We've been reporting on the shortages for a long time, and now they've run out of fuel.
Exactly. The Energy Minister Vicente O Levy has finally said the island has no diesel, it has no oil and has very limited gas. He said the power grid was in a critical state. This has been exacerbated, this fuel shortage, by the US blockade, threatening tariffs to any country selling oil to Cuba. So it's once very kind of prominent suppliers, Venezuela and Mexico, haven't sent any fuel to the island. Only one oil tanker, a Russian oil tanker, has been permitted to pass through this blockade. But according to the Energy Minister, the delivery from that oil tanker has now run out, leaving the island in complete darkness, so to speak.
So complete darkness, this seems maybe like an obvious question, but what has it meant for life there? How are people getting by?
People are really struggling. For months now, the situation has been deteriorating at a quite rapid rate. I've heard from residents that they're waking up in the early hours of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., when there is a brief moment of electricity to do their daily tasks, be that cooking for the next day, washing clothes. People are enduring prolonged blackouts. These can last up to 22 hours, commonly in Havana and the neighbouring, the outskirts of the neighbourhoods there. That is on top of basic goods being scarce. There really aren't many basic goods and food. Many individuals are saying they are living solely off bread, and anything you try and preserve in fridges, you can't preserve it because there's no energy to preserve it. Solar panel has been something that many people have been talking about. We've had a few humanitarian aid deliveries from Mexico. The energy minister has also said from China has delivered some solar power equipment. However, solar panel is very expensive to start, and it's also quite weather intermittent. So that is a source of potential energy, but at the moment people are really just struggling to live their daily lives.
And that desperation, Mimi, has turned into anger as well. How unusual is it to see protests like we saw last night?
These protests are really unusual. They mark the biggest single demonstration since this crisis was exacerbated in January. Any political dissent is largely quashed by the authoritarian regime in Cuba, and we've seen many political prisoners detained now for months, years, some of them without being charged with anything. So the majority of challenges to the Cuban government come from outside the island, and people just want change. They're really hungry for change, and it comes off the back of the US renewing its offer for $100 million humanitarian aid if Cuba makes some meaningful changes to its communist system. So humanitarian aid is being offered, but at a large cost to the island. But people are desperate. They are urging their government to end their daily struggles and speak and make a deal with the US, who is exacerbating the crisis.
Mimi, thank you so much.